So you've got some star reps who are setting appointments in under 2 minutes and constantly hitting their call quotas by lunch. Sounds like they're superstars, right? Well, if you said yes, unfortunately, you fell into the trap of fast calls. Because what I just described isn't actually productivity. What it is leakage that's likely costing your business tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars each year. And sadly, in most companies that I look at, it's one of the biggest reasons why their demos aren't actually closing. Because if there's one rule here to remember, it's that fast calls don't mean qualified calls. They mean that your reps are sprinting through scripts, they're skipping over key areas, and they're booking in empty calendar slots so that their numbers look good on a report. But when you look a layer deeper, they're actually going nowhere in real life. So here's the actual trap that most companies fall into. What they do is they reward volume. They track things like dials, they praise reps on their, quote unquote set rate, right? But they're actually blind to the rot that's going on in their calendar and therefore their revenue. And, that's what's actually happening underneath the book calls. Because when a rep books in a job in, let's say, 90 seconds, here's a couple of things that they likely didn't do. They probably didn't dig into, who else needs to be involved in that demo. They probably didn't listen for hesitation. They likely didn't set clear expectations, and they definitely didn't slow down enough to actually surface buying intent. All they did is kind of go through the motions, got a yes, and then moved on, if we're being honest, right? But in high ticket home improvement, that yes doesn't actually mean anything if the person answering the door doesn't have a clear picture of why the rep is coming and actively wants them to be there. Now, this is an issue that I've seen firsthand for a company in Florida that was running $280,000 worth of inbound leads a month. They had a team of setters averaging 30 to 40 calls a day, and one rep in particular was blowing everybody else out of the water on paper, as they had nearly double the set rate that everybody else had. But when I looked a little bit closer at their data and segmented their numbers by rep, his two-leg show rate was under 50%, and his demo close rate was under 15%. So if he was the star rep who was booking by far the most calls, then why were these numbers so bad? Well, the reason was that he was booking calls lightning fast. And when we listened to these calls, he was using hard close language like, we'll send somebody out, to give you a quote. And then moving on before anything real came out. So this left zero space for second decision makers. There was no real, qualification, no tone calibration to make sure that the prospect was actually interested. There was just speed and quarterly bonuses for supposedly, crushing his targets. So I decided to actually rewire two main things. First, I asked him to change his comp plan from sets to shown demos to ensure that the company was actually aligning the incentive with the outcome that they wanted. I also retrained his pacing, giving him a set script that included structured slowdowns and question trees, as well as pattern interrupts to surface objections and secondary parties. So what happened? Well, within 7 weeks, his show rate jumped from 43% up to 71%. His close rate on those shows more than doubled, and his lead issued to sale ratio went from 1 in 10 to 1 in 4. It was the same rep, right? He had the exact same lead flow, but what changed is he had different intent, a different scripting structure, and the company set things up to make sure he had more aligned behavior. And, that's what it means to have a locked-in appointment system. When your call center is dialed in, your reps aren't simply just, racing for that yes. Instead, what they're actually doing is, slowing things down strategically, even when the lead itself seems like they're super red hot and easy to book in. So for me, the sign of a well-trained rep is when they're asking questions like, is there anyone else whose opinion you value when it comes to projects around the home? Or, is this something that you've been thinking about for a while, or more of like a recent interest? Or maybe they're asking, have you had anyone else out to take a look at this problem yet? And yes, asking these kinds of questions is slowing down the individual pacing of each call, But what it doesn't slow down is your overall sales process, because ultimately it's going to protect your calendar. And by being intentional about each appointment that you book, it makes sure that your closers are walking into a house where the homeowner knows what to expect, has a real problem to solve, and is actually in a position to buy. And, let me make one thing clear. The goal itself isn't to drag out these calls for the sake of it, right? The actual goal is to get real, true clarity before your rep gets into the truck to go on a visit. Because every rushed appointment that you book wastes that sales rep's time, it burns rep budget, and it's going to drain your team's confidence in your entire sales pipeline. So that's why every rep that we deploy, trained in inbound, outbound, or both, is going to be coached to book with precision, not with pressure, right? So to me, that means that they're not going to be just reading off a script. Instead, they're going to be trained to actually listen. They're going to be trained to qualify and to actually protect your calendar, and to make sure that your sales team isn't just, chasing these ghosts. So if your calendar is full, but you feel like your revenue is flat, then it's not a sales issue, most likely. It's probably a call flow issue, and that's exactly what we solve. So if you're looking for a way to see a bigger return on investment on the leads that you're already spending thousands each month to generate, all while having a team that is cheaper and performs better than you could find and train yourself, then send me a message and I'll walk you through how it all works and whether your company is a good fit. And of course, if you found this video useful, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. I break down videos just like this every single week, which will be teaching you how to improve your inbound and outbound call system. Thank you, and see you in the next one.